Tonight on the ReidOut.
Elon Musk and I are in a position to start the mass deportations of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of the D.C. bureaucracy. And I don't know if you've gotten to know Elon yet, but he doesn't bring a chisel, he brings a chainsaw. And we're going to be taking it to that bureaucracy. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course it's going to be fun. For Elon, Vivek, and all their billionaire friends, their government efficiency commission will reward them on the backs of everyday Americans who, Musk admits, will face hardship as a result of their budget cuts. Plus, Democrats need to get real about what's to blame for their election losses. Almost 3 weeks since the election, the facts are beginning to come into focus. And we begin tonight with the model for where America is heading. I'm talking about Hungary, the small Central European nation that is a favorite of right-wing politicians, former Fox hosts, and, of course, Donald Trump himself, because of one man, Hungary's authoritarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. He's been eroding Hungarian democracy for more than a decade now. A former member of the Hungarian parliament, Gábor Schneering, writes in Politico, Trump's goal this time is to remake the American government to enhance his power. He isn't the first modern right-wing populist to attempt this. He is following a playbook pioneered by Viktor Orbán. Orbán came to power in 2010, and some of his first acts were to take aim at the independence of Hungary's judiciary and news media, rewriting the constitution to force senior judges to retire, and setting up a new court system overseen directly by his government, and consolidating control over the media. His government and its allies took control of 90% of media outlets, elevating Orbán's propaganda. Orbán and his party, Fidesz, have also tightened his grip over Hungary's electoral system, changing laws to rig the system in his favor and keep him in power in perpetuity. And much like the American right, Orbán has gone out of his way to stoke division by stoking fear about racial diversity and demonizing immigrants. He's even embraced the far-right concept of replacement theory, warning against race mixing in Europe. Orbán has blocked asylum seekers from entering Hungary and referred to Middle Eastern refugees as Muslim invaders. In fact, Orbán has made it a point of escalating the culture wars in Hungary in consolidating his power. He's offered tax breaks and subsidies to boost the Hungarian birth rate for a future without immigration. He's also tightened abortion laws, passing a fetal heartbeat law like the ones that have banned abortion across much of our own country. Orbán and his party have also passed laws prioritizing patriotic education, seized control of Hungary's state universities, and passed laws banning LGBTQ content in schools and children's television. Sound familiar? Orbán has also openly cultivated a relationship with the U.S. Republican Party. He's hosted CPAC events in Budapest and was the keynote speaker at a CPAC conference in Texas 2 years ago. It's an authoritarian love fest that goes both ways. Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, who even hosted a week of shows from Hungary before he got fired from Fox, and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance are just a few on the American right who have sung Orbán's praises.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orbán, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart, Prime Minister of Hungary.
He thinks families are more important than banks. He believes countries need borders. For saying these things out loud, Orbán has been vilified.
I'm not endorsing every single thing that Viktor Orbán has ever done. I don't know everything he's ever done. On the university principle, the idea that taxpayers should have some influence in how their money is spent at these universities, it's a totally reasonable thing. And I do think that he's made some smart decisions there that we could learn from the United States.
The reality is that Viktor Orbán's Hungary is very much a cautionary tale for Americans as we face Donald Trump in the White House a second time. For how we can survive and resist our own modern-day autocrat, take it from someone who lived through Viktor Orbán's power grab, the aforementioned former Hungarian politician, Gábor Schneering, who writes, Hungary's key lesson is you don't protect democracy by talking about democracy. You protect democracy by protecting people. Only a democracy that works for the people is sustainable. And Gabor Schering joins me now. Mr. Schering, thank you so much for being here. I want to start by asking you, what was Viktor Orbán's sales pitch when he first ran for the leadership in that country in 2010?
Thank you very much for having me. So in 2010, before Orbán was re-elected back to power, he basically rallied on the massive disillusionment that people felt with the previous governing coalition, which was a left-liberal governing coalition, stagnating real wages, escalating income inequalities, frustration with banks. That was just the post-financial crisis period. So that, and also brewing kind of racial hostility, especially throughout rural Hungary, where Viktor Orbán was in competition with an even more radical far-right party compared to Fidesz to capitalize and channel that kind of rural anger. So these were the most important issues that catapulted back him to power. He was prime minister before, between 98 and 2002. And when he lost the election back then, he drew the conclusion that should he get reelected once again, which he did in 2010, he's going to be much more aggressive in his attempt to stay in power. And in fact, he has managed to do that. He's been in power ever since 2010, doing basically everything to make the life of the opposition as hard as possible to get rid of him.
And talk about some of the ways that he's prevented the opposition from from challenging his grip on the country.
Sure. So, many of these things that you also mentioned in the introduction are eerily familiar with some of Donald Trump's approach, especially as it is laid out in the infamous Project 2025. So they began with what you might call an administrative shock therapy, a slew of fast-moving legislation to overpower opponents, fire bureaucrats and nominate loyalists across state institutions that are solely dependent on Viktor Orbán. So that was a crucial step that allowed him to control the state institutions. He was fighting this battle against, they didn't use the word deep state, but they were fighting a battle against something very similar, which they call the post-socialist elites, his fixation about these elite groups occupying key positions in state, in culture, universities, in the economy. And he wanted to kind of dislodge that perceived kind of enemy. And this allowed him this kind of legitimize a full frontal attack on these institutions. He moved against the media to conquer independent media, partially by relying on state public broadcasting, but also kind of controlling throughout the country's local and regional newspapers and outlets, forging an alliance with friendly billionaires and oligarchs to buy up independent news media outlets. So that's, again, something that resembles very much, it's not at the same level as it is in Hungary, but we've seen similar steps in the United States, how friendly billionaires can interfere in the operation of editorial decisions. And with the latest nominee for the FCC, I think with a person who was responsible for kind of authoring a part of the infamous Project 2025, this could be a crucial step in kind of allowing Trump to kind of go ahead with his threats against media that he dislikes. You mentioned gerrymandering, tinkering with the voter and the electoral system. Just a couple of days ago, they again, fearing that there is a new oppositional party that is becoming too competitive. Now they are changing the electoral law just again, reducing the number of electoral districts in Budapest, which leans towards the opposition, and then increasing electoral districts in other parts of the country, which just by a simple administrative decision, increases the potential of Fidesz staying in power. So that's the kind of the institutional part, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so eerily familiar, given even, you know, the idea that he lost power, was thrown out and brought back. It's all so similar. And it sort of makes sense now, right, that he was rooting for Donald Trump just weeks before his election, saying, you know, fingers crossed it would happen. But, you know, the voters who put in these kinds of regimes, as you said, often are responding to economic malaise or their sense that they are being sort of treated unfairly in the economy. But the economy in Hungary has not gotten better. The latest numbers here show that the economy is entering its second recession in 2 years. The economy is stagnant. Hungarian GDP growth will be close to zero in the third quarter. Hungary was in a recession for much of 2023. It was in a mild recovery, but not anymore. And it recorded the highest inflation rate among European Union countries, a high of 25.7% as of January of 2023. So it doesn't seem that his reforms, whatever he would consider them reforms, have made average Hungarians' lives better, have they?
So you're absolutely right with regard to the most recent figures, with the basically since the COVID crisis and then the Russian attack and invasion of Ukraine. Since then, the economic situation in Hungary has gotten really, really bad. Real wages declining, as you very well summarized. However, before COVID, there was another period, and it's not just Hungary. So Orbán was lucky in that regard that the whole kind of region has benefited from the kind of growth period that Europe has experienced after basically during the recovery after the 2008-2010 financial crisis. So that helped Orbán to portray himself as a people-friendly politician. But policies are one thing. And it's important also to see that he did introduce some policies that were beneficial to people, like, for example, increasing the minimum wage. Even though compared to the countries in the region, he kept real wage growth below the level of surrounding nations. He still increased it just a little bit so that people think that Viktor Orbán is their friend. He also kind of introduced other policies like these family measures that many people think that is helping them. But he also was very clever in kind of rallying people against what the previous elites. And there the crucial lesson, I think, in Hungary is once you get into a situation where people think or ask themselves, why should I care for liberal democracy if liberal democracy does not care for me? That's a situation that you want to avoid. Because that's when Orbán could really get away with his authoritarian solutions, because people felt that the previous democratic elites and regime was not really providing socially and economically. So that's, I think, a crucial issue. But there was also kind of a problem with the political identity of the previous left and liberal elites. Again, eerily resembling some of the mistakes committed by the Democratic Party in a sense of the distance, from people, the difficulties in connecting to average low-income working-class Americans who feel like that their anger that is not being heard enough, that they're being dismissed. I think these are serious issues, and they can lead to a loss of support, even if your policies are in fact better. So that's the kind you might call it. I call this in my article symbolic class politics. So it's one thing to have good policies. You also have to come across as a friend of people who is able to listen to people, who is able to understand their anger about the economic situation and frustration.
That is an excellent point. I think it's an excellent and exceptional lesson that people needed to hear and should learn. Gabor Sharing, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Valuable information. And coming up, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Cheers. Coming up, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have big plans for their newfangled Government Efficiency Commission, despite neither having any understanding of how the government actually works. How their budget cut recommendations could impact the everyday American. Next.